Some cuttings require a lot of technical skills to root, and then other cuttings you can just throw it in a glass of water like a ficus or a willow, and in a few weeks you'll have a bunch of roots. And there are some species that you can just rip a branch off a tree like this little pomegranate, put it in any random soil mixture you have, and in a few months you'll have a beautiful upright tree. But many species take 3 months, 6 months, or even a year to strike as a cutting. And if you just put it in a little bit of water or throw it in any random soil mixture, you're just gonna kill it and it's gonna end up like this. I've been taking cuttings for 15 years now, and I have made many mistakes. So all the tips I'm going to tell you today are from my own personal failures, and I just hope that this video will help people save some time and learn the things that I had to learn the hard way. So stick with me through this video, and I can guarantee by the end you're going to be better at taking cuttings. A quick disclaimer, you will see me use a lot of small containers or cups for my propagation, and that's simply because I do not have the room to have a lot of containers around my tiny apartment. If you have the space, it is a lot easier to use larger rectangular containers for your cuttings. So now we're going to jump back in time 4 or 5 months to this coastal redwood cutting, and this is just to show you results so you know this method works. A coastal redwood is an intermediate to hard plant to take a cutting from, but it's easy if you know exactly what to do. So we'll look at these results of 5 months and then we'll go into all the tips. So we have the coastal redwood, olive tree and giant sequoia cuttings, and as you can see through the plastic cup, they have began to root. So each cup has signs of rooting. Now, here's the olive tree too. Oh wow, look, this is fantastic. Four out of 5 of these were successful. Let's do the olives. So I'm just gently squeezing the side of the cup here. 4 out of 5. Let's lastly do the giant sequoia. So as we transfer these newly rooted cuttings, we'll talk about the first tip. Now this should actually be mentioned last because it's at the end of the process of taking cuttings, but because we're here, we'll talk about it now. And that is to slowly adjust your cuttings to the outside environment. If they've been in a box of high humidity and low level light, slowly adjust them to that so they don't die of shock. Tip 2, you must master the balance of water. Too much water will lead to festering decay and mold, and not enough water is going to leave you with a crispy stick. So how do you find the balance? The balance is with humidity. I cannot stress how important this is. If you listen to anything in this video, listen to this. Your cuttings do not have to be wet. They need to be humid. Your substrate does not have to be soaking wet. Barely keep it moist. You just have to gently mist your plants, and then you seal it 100% tight so that you have 100% humidity. And this will allow your cuttings to survive for months and months without roots. Step 3, substrate selection matters. In regular organic soils like this, there are literally billions of microorganisms, bacteria, and spores. And as we all know, spores are reproductive cells of fungi. And what do fungi do? They break things down and cause decay. So if you combine that with watering that's too wet, you're going to get decay on your organic matter in your soils. So let's minimize this. And how do we do that? We use inorganic soils. And so what I like to use is a 100% ratio of perlite. And perlite is a volcanic glass that's highly porous and free draining, but most importantly, no organic matter in it. Your cutting does not need nutrients in the soil yet, or any kind of organic matter, because there's no roots to absorb it. It just needs to promote root growth. You can transfer it into organic matter once the root strikes. Now imagine that this bamboo stick is a cutting submerged in substrate. And those little circles, that's the perlite that it's surrounded in. Now notice the perlite is chunky enough to have air pockets all around it. This not only lets the water drain and not sit on the stem of the cutting, but it allows for high humidity around the cutting without keeping it wet. So it's actually flourishing without being wet, but not being dry. It's literally the perfect substrate to use. Just think about the stem of a cutting being your hand. It's not adapted to being in water like roots. You can only imagine what would happen after a few months. That's why perlite is so important. Step 4, unless you enjoy cooking your cuttings, I recommend keeping them out of direct sunlight. It's pretty self-explanatory. I like to keep mine in very bright indirect light until I see some root growth. Step 5, location of your cutting can matter. Now this doesn't actually apply to elms, but it's easy to visualize, so that's why we will use this. Picture this as a tree. For some species, taking a side branch will not grow a leader. That means you need to take your cuttings from the apex or crown of a tree, an upward growing branch, or a basal shoot from the bottom of a trunk growing up. So picture this as a dual trunk, taking that little cutting there growing upwards. That will also be a good upright cutting. So do your research, because some species will grow only sideways if you take a sideward branch. Now it's time to apply what we've learned, and there's a few other tips I'm going to walk you through here right now. And the first one is you need to know the different types of wood in a species, because depending on the species, you need to know when to take the cutting. So this is obviously fresh growth and it's very soft. This is semi-hardwood, and that's when the fresh growth has hardened off, okay? And this is when I tend to take most of my cuttings. And then you have your hardwood, and this is the most difficult to root, can take the longest, and yeah, it's a little more tricky. So I usually, depending on the species, but I use these for cuttings, okay? So now, the next thing we have to do is choose our height. And you make your incision just below a leaf, okay? And the reason you do that is because where this node is, this is where most of the time you are going to get roots coming from, okay? So let's clear the stem, like this. Now, depending on the size of the cutting, some people, I don't usually do this, but some people may scrape away and expose some of the cambium, okay? And that is potentially going to give root growth. And it does work, but sometimes it can promote some fungal issues, okay? And more than not, the roots come from the nodes instead of the internode. It's not true for all species, but that's just a common thing. And sometimes you will also get roots from the base of the cut, but I would personally rely on nodes for cuttings, okay? Another thing that some people do, especially with larger cuttings, is once I've made their incision, they leave this to callus for a while, okay? But with a small minor cutting, and if you're doing a lot, it doesn't really matter. So the next thing we do is continue to clear the cutting and leave just 1 or 2 leaves. And the reason you do this is because, like we talked about in the video before, there's no roots. So this cutting cannot sustain this leaf, the foliage, with water. So the less leaves, the easier it is to let this cutting survive. The other reason we clear the stem is because if we submerge it in the substrate like this and it's underground and you have leaves here, you're just going to promote more fungal issues and decay, okay? So we clear it, have 1 leaf, and this is a perfect example of what you want. The other thing you should note is to keep the cuttings warm, and always do it at the right time of year, okay? Just do it in spring or late summer to be safe, and that's for most cuttings. And another thing is, if you have a tendency to have fungal issues, no matter how many times you try it, you can use a fungicide and spray that on the cuttings. I don't personally use that. And you can also sterilize your equipment before you take your cuttings, okay? So the next step is you obviously put it in some rooting hormone. Now the rooting hormone isn't necessary, but it is helpful, okay? So once it's nice and dipped in, like that, it's time to put it in our substrate. Now remember, always use perlite. I have run out of perlite, so we're going to use this regular soil. Ignore this, use perlite. It's the best thing to use, okay? You'll make your incision into the soil, poke a little hole, and then you want to submerge, I would say 2 nodes, okay? And then you put that in the soil like that, press it down, and then you'll do as many cuttings as you want. And then once you've completed that, put it in a humid environment. So remember, we're going to spray this cutting. A bit more. This is empty, I should have filled this up before the video. Okay, that's all you need, okay? Cover this up and then seal it. If you have a lid, like a clear lid, that's much better as well. But seal this, make sure this is very moist, keep it in indirect light, and this is the best way to get cuttings, okay? So I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of the video, and we'll see you in the next one.